Welcome back to this Get Cracking JavaScript tutorial. Today we are going to talk about functions. Let's get cracking. A few words before we start coding. The reason why we use functions is to organize our code. If we break them down into smaller chunks, it will be easier to understand afterwards and focus in specific areas of your code that you are trying to understand. It's also a way to reuse your code. So you define a piece of code once and then you use multiple times across your application. Otherwise you would have to rewrite the code that you wrote inside the function across multiple places. A few pieces of advice: give your function only one job to do. It will make it simpler for you to understand afterwards. Once you have defined that one job the function will do, keep it simple. There are more than one way to achieve something, and if you find the simplest way, it will be better, of course. Give your function clear names. So the names of your functions will help your readers to understand what that function is about, what it's trying to achieve. And avoid side effects, which means your functions should be pure, which means that your functions should receive a list of parameters and return a value. It should not affect the outside world. We will have a better understanding of that in a bit. So how can we declare a function? We declare a function by placing the keyword function in our script, and that will tell your compiler, the JavaScript compiler, that what's coming next is a function. Next, we give our function a name, which should be very clear and easy to understand. After that, you place a pair of empty parentheses in front of the name of the function, where you potentially could have a list of parameters, and then you define a pair of squiggly brackets to define the body of your function. So within here we can write our logic that will be reused multiple times across your application, and then at the end you return a value. If you do not use an explicit return keyword here, then what's going to be returned from your function is the value undefined. But usually you want to have return an explicit return. Now, to change the way the function works or do its job, I can pass it a couple of parameters. I will pass here user, and then I will change the way the function is working. It will affect the way the function calculates the return, right? So for me to call the function, I will reference its name, get greeting message, and I will print that to the console. If I save my code at this point, you'll see that the definition of a function is printed in the console. By the way you open this is by hitting F12 in your browser. So and then selecting the tab console here. So here is a way to reference our function, but if we really want to call it, then we have to place a pair of parentheses in front of the name. Then the function is going to be called, and we see the output in the console. Now I'm outputting here undefined because user was not defined as parameter to my function. JavaScript will not break, it will just assign undefined to user. Now I will return dim, and we can see that dim affected the way the function calculates the message. Another interesting thing that you can do with functions is this. You can declare a function. Let's say print something. And then we can call console.log in here to say printing something. Now, what I can do is I can use the reference of this function and pass it to another function as a parameter, which is quite useful in JavaScript. So within getGreetingMessage, I will call that function. And if I save this, you'll see printing something, welcome dim. The function is not being called here, but it's been called here. If I remove this call, you see that printing something disappeared. That's pretty much it. By the way, this is violating the make your function pure, no side effect thing, because it's affecting the outside world of your function, right? So when you call print something, it's affecting the outside world, and that's not ideal. To refactor this a little bit, we're going to do this, something to print, and instead of affecting the outside world, you can just return the message, and then whomever called the method whomever called the function will take care of dealing with the result. So outside here, I would call something to print, and you'll see the message being printed to your console. This is a good practice. Never affect the outside world, or at least avoid it at all costs. Receive the parameters, do something, and return the output. Do not affect the outside world. Do not call a REST backend endpoint. Do not print something to the console. Just return the value, and that will save you a lot of headache later on. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Until next time, happy coding.